they're the guy that wants to take control. They want to go from 0 to 100. They want to know the shortcuts right away, and they want to dive in. And that's really why 4 to 7 times per year they quit and they fail.
Welcome to the High Voltage Business Builders, a show where we interview entrepreneurs growing and scaling their income through e-commerce and showing you the path to make your first or next million. All right, folks, welcome back to the High Voltage Business Builders podcast. I'm Neil here. I have my good friend who's been around me for a while. We were just jokingly mentioning we actually haven't got on a call in a while, although we've been in each other's ecosystem for a long time. You'll probably tell me how long it's been. But he's here as part of the High Producers Academy. What Darren is going to talk about today and what I'm interested to talk about. I know we do a lot of business consultations and we talk about Amazon and e-com and business in general on here. But one of the things we don't always talk about, and I'm grateful to have him on today to go through this, is sustainable health and wellness, true sustainable health. The building blocks of a great business, but also what I call creating a lifestyle that drives your business, not the business that drives your lifestyle. So you're not in the hustle and grind mentality. So Darren, let's unpack some of that today. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's great to jump in here and share some wisdom, something a little bit different again for your audience, which is quite the irony of what we're going to talk about today, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You know, we're all obsessed, driven, programmed, whatever you want to call it, to the American dream and the lifestyle of chasing success, really. And typically it's at the consequence of every other area of our life, right? We're consumed. Many of the high producers I work with are consumed in their business in terms of time, energy, focus, priorities. They're trying to then take care of their health, their marriage, you know, being a father, being a role model, with the minute resources that they've got remaining at the end of their work day, shall we say. So yeah, it's a very interesting conversation. We'll dive into
let's start
a lot of the philosophy around that. So I'm sure it'll be very, very valuable.
So what are some of the major components that initially you deal with? Someone comes to you. What are the top things you're seeing people struggle with that you work through with them?
Yeah, it's a really complex area, health, shall we say, in quotes, because it's some people might actually start to see, you know, the red herring that health is over the last few years. But let's just look around us. Everybody, really, the majority of the population is depressed, sad, stressed, overweight, you know, got all sorts of health issues, stress and anxiety, unable to sleep, and are addicted to caffeine, stimulants, convenient, crappy food. We can call it food just for this purpose. And we're really in the pursuit. Society really has been programmed towards a perspective that is moving towards pleasure. And we're confusing pleasure with happiness. So when we're talking about health, these are areas that most programs and courses never really touch on. And it's why very, very few people can stick with a health or lifestyle change and actually take care of the area of their life that's responsible for all of their results in their work life and in their personal life.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to think about that way. As I mentioned, lifestyle as a business, not business as a lifestyle. It's one of the things I try to mentor into my people. Is the realization to get success out of any business or model or whatever it is you're producing income or doing in your life. You need to have the mindset of success in your health and wellness and apply that to your lifestyle so the outcome is a business that supports it. See, everybody gets this in reverse. I don't know who's preaching this stuff out in the world, that, boy, you got to get that business and get out of that 9-to-5 job. And all that sounds really great and fine. And of course, we want to escape normal rat races and we want to get out of eating crappy food that's totally not even real. And we want to get to that idea of that lifestyle. What I have come to recognize, and I believe you have as well, Darren, is that you can create that lifestyle and health and wellness in your mind anywhere you are currently in life and in your walk. And then you can approach it in the business direction that starts to build a business or components of business or a lifestyle of business that will actually support those things in the next steps. Does that make sense?
You know, I talk a lot about accumulation and momentum, consistency over a long period of time, how that really, you know, accumulates a lot of results and overcomes a lot of hurdles that initially seem to be quite far away. But when we start to take care of the simple stuff consistently over a long period of time, and we actually create some real simple shifts in the behaviors of our work life, you know, in terms of balance or the lack of balance. And actually, when we start to get honest about our priorities and we start to look at where our finances are going, where our time and energy is going, it's very confronting because very few people who are, you know, in quotes, successful in business are actually aligned with what they actually say is important, which is having the capacity to
Right.
Be in control of their day, their time, their resources, their attention, and their health. And then we start to look at, well, how much of their resources are applied to, their family and their health. And it's very, very, in comparison to their work, it's very, very little. So this is where we have to change the philosophy and how we work, the culture of how we work, how we actually work, or are in on mode, as I call it, and where that non-negotiable time where we're in off mode is, even in terms of hobbies, having fun, our sex lives, our marriages, dating, dating life as a married man, married busy businessman.
Yeah.
These are the things, these are the honest areas that many of us guys or men, busy men, really are not aware of, that they need help in. And then we look at the health, how that is as a byproduct of all those things that they're really searching for, which is moving away from stress, moving away from the anxiety and the stress and the inflammation, instead of towards pleasure, which is gratification, food, and all sorts of other things that's conveniently available to us. Drugs, porn, whatever that is. A lot of it is in consumption mode.
Coping mechanism.
Status mode, moving away from pleasure towards what happiness is, and that's where we start to get a bit more spiritual, a bit more philosophical.
Well, you can't, because you can say, well, if I don't eat that kind of food or do that kind of thing, I'm not going to be happy. I don't want to be a vegan. I don't want to eat cardboard. I want to eat food that tastes good. Having a 15-year path of getting out of the world's food system and standard medical practices with my life, now realizing that my yearly updates as a 46-year-old man shows my blood work as a 35-year-old man. I may carry about 25 pounds of extra weight, but I live in an environment now that my daily active routine is probably better than most people's CrossFit routine. Because of where I live and what I choose to do as a lifestyle, I don't have to go to a gym. I live in an outdoor gym, literally. So let's talk about some of these particular areas that I think are going to be interesting, and I know you focus on. And I do believe you focus a little bit more on the men than the women, or do you cover both kinds of groups? Because those are very different in terms of...
Yeah, it's all very specifically aimed or catered towards the men, the male body, male lifestyle, belief system, physical body, males. Right.
So the women plus usually probably hang up right now and just cancel the podcast, because you're not going to get anything.
I'll send your husbands over here.
That's right. No, that's okay. We have stuff for everybody. The point is, okay, so for men focused on their work and health life, most of us are very driven. We're a lot of type A, type B personalities. We got to go, get, buy, spend, do. It's always like running and going. How do you help somebody shape a different path? How do you get somebody going?
It's a really good question. It's a really good place to start, because initially when the guys inside the High Producers Academy come in, they're the guy that wants to take control. They want to go from 0 to 100. They want to know the shortcuts right away, and they want to dive in. And that's really why 4 to 7 times per year they quit and they fail. It's because they're actually more prone to failing in this area of their life, because they've got evidence that hustling and running at 100 miles an hour, they've got evidence that that works in their business and financially for a time. But when it comes to their body, it's the opposite of what gets results. They're already stressed, inflamed, fatigued, overwhelmed. So they want to take that physical being into a hard gym workout, into these restrictive diets, into this overwhelm, really, this chaos. And they wonder why they can't stick with it. They hate it. They hate the process. It's adding more noise and more mental overload to their world, and they're subconsciously then starting to build evidence in their mindset that health is just too much at this stage, time of their life, and they just fall into old habits. They just reject it. So the first thing is that they have to accept that the simple things must get done. I just say simple gets done. We have a framework for the simple get done framework, and it's very, very simple, and it's the stuff that's not sexy that this character is actually attracted to. The shortcuts, they want to go from 0 to 100. So when you start telling them, okay, we need to actually look at your priorities, we need to start setting up your environment so it's convenient to implement. We need to set up probably a 2-week schedule or time frame to get you in a place before you're ready to get started. So normally they want to get started. Every other program that I've ever looked at and been a part of, with research and all that kind of thing, they're already, once you sign up to a program or course or lifestyle change, health and fitness, mumbo jumbo, whatever you want to call it,
right?
Everybody's starting right now, starting right away. They want the workouts, they want the nutrition, they want all the sexy stuff. So it takes us about
75 hard thing, isn't it? Which is a big trend right now.
Yeah, we can talk about that as well, but it's just about it's about actually creating the space in their lifestyle, in their working day, creating the capacity to take care of themselves, And usually their environment doesn't allow it, their schedule doesn't allow it, their routines don't allow it. They're usually just adding more on top of the noise into their working day. So more, and usually it's at the end of the working day or the start of their working day when their capacity is low. So we have to actually reframe what health is, and we have to approach it from a 12-month minimum perspective towards a decade perspective, because then you're going to take a different approach.
Yeah.
You're actually not going to run at 100 miles an hour, and you're starting to understand the philosophy of accumulation, of actually day in, day out, week in, week out for a long period of time, how that accumulates, that actually beats consistency-wise everything. Consistency is the name of the game when it comes to health. Then we can look at intensity. Then we can say, well, if we're actually framing our lifestyle change over the next 12 months, because that's going to actually be sustainable for the next decades, then we don't need to work ourselves into the ground with 90%, 100% intense workouts, 2, 3, 4, 5 times per week in some cases. And wonder why we get burnt out, injured, hate life, really.
Yeah.
And already inflamed. So we go through a philosophy where we never work out to a high intensity level. We actually work out about 65%, just above comfortable. And the philosophy around that is accumulation over a long period of time. They'll get an average of 4 workouts per week over 50 weeks of the year. Whereas high intensity training, people don't average, it's actually 0.9 times per week over a 12-month period. There's loads of reasons for that, depending on what research you look at and how reliable that research is. So it's really about creating a philosophy that's a lifestyle change, which actually frames our environment. So we need to make some changes to actually what is around us, who is around us, making those environments super convenient when it comes to when we switch off from technology. Who is around us, what agreements we've set up with people around us, what written agreements we've set up with ourselves, and actually how we're going to be held accountable to that with a coach, with people around us, with our family members, business partner, whoever we spend time with. We need to get all these people on side and actually present them with an agreement where, hey, this is what I'm committed to for the next 12 months. This is probably what you're going to notice. Some changes here, some changes there. When we're going out for business meals or lunches or events, I'm not going to be consuming alcohol. Don't be a bad influence. I want you to support me on this. Same with the wife. Don't bring any crappy food home. Be a negative influence. And what tends to happen is those people start to improve their health as well. People in the household, people in, who you work with in those environments, we start to create a culture and environment where this goal is supported in areas where they're usually highly sabotaged. So there's some of the initial things, the initial frameworks that we have to start to touch on, which is overhauling our environment, setting up agreements. And from there, we can then implement the very, very simple things that make the biggest difference initially.
Yeah. And a lot of that takes male leadership in yourself and your household to be able to create that environment, get your family members to buy off on that environment, or your significant others to get involved in supporting that. Because it's pretty hard to just say, hey, don't bring home that crap anymore. A lot of people take offense when it comes to food or changes in food. We've had that experience over the last 15 years. It's like, well, we don't eat that anymore. Well, what's wrong with you? Well, there's nothing wrong with us now because we don't eat that food anymore. And so it's food and events and family things and gatherings. It becomes very personal for a little bit with people to manage that food situation, right? And so much of our food is engineered. If my findings, and I'm sure this can be replicated into yours or others, if you eat around the outside of the supermarket, you're more than likely going to find something you should actually consume that's more natural and real. Don't eat in the middle, where pretty much all the roads are all artificially, chemically, sugared up drugs. We found that cleaning our diets was very helpful for my wife's issues, which was then translated into the issues we have with my girls. So we had to detoxify them. And as we went through the process of recognition that detoxification had to come from changing our entire way of thinking about everything, from the water we drank to the food we eat to the environment we were in, we had to flip our lifestyle upside down. We had to make some dramatic changes. And that's hard for a lot of people to accept, because I literally made a post yesterday about how we made this change in 2008 to set on this path, and we tried to take a few people with us, but everybody scoffed. And I jokingly said, like, who's laughing now, right? Because as we went through the last few years, so much of the dramatic aspect of health and wellness that got brought up, to the life of everybody suddenly being a health and wellness expert is something we kind of sat back and watched, like from the bleachers. Because for us, it was a little easier to walk through that, recognizing more of what was happening in the world. And you probably know this, and those who are listening may not recognize this, but one thing that just occurred, and you should all pay attention to this, is a federal judge about a month and a half ago, or maybe 2 months ago, required Pfizer to push its documentation out onto the web. And they said, we want 76 years. And he's like, no, you can't do that. So what people didn't recognize was literally just about 3 or 4 days ago, 80,000 pages of Pfizer documentation from their clinical trials went out. The clinical trials before they released the vaccination out into full.
Your podcast is about to get censored. You just mentioned the V word.
Like I said, I will die on certain hills and I don't care because it's out there in the public sphere. So I'm just talking about what's out there. This is not theoretical conspiracy theory nonsense. Go look it up. There are 80,000 pages. The particular area I thought was most interesting was the effect on pregnant women and the efficacy rating of it, the actual efficacy rating before they released it. If you're not aware of that, if you have questions or concerns, I encourage you to go check it out. Some of your health and wellness challenges you are going to face or think about or deal with or have dealt with in the past are going to be challenged by the information that just came out. And you're going to have to be willing to look at that and really objectively break down some mental barriers to determine whether or not you could accept the reality of what was just published. And it's not all gone through yet. There's 80,000 pages of information. So they're still scouring. So I'm sure some very interesting things. So we went through this whole period. You obviously mentored and coached a number of people through that period. What were some of the things you dealt with here in the last 2-3 years that have been things you've been dealing with with your people?
Yeah, it's a good question, really. I think what I learned was that most people are not ready to receive a huge worldview shift. So we have to actually help present these kinds of things in a very slow, surface level way.
Correct.
Initially looking at, the simple things, the water system, how we actually poison through the water, how that's affecting our hormones, which is quite a good one for the guys because they're understanding that the hair's falling out, the sex drive is going away, they're just they're getting man boobs, they're getting fat bellies. And when we start to connect those issues to something that they care about, they start to make the connection. They're more receptive to, oh, right, that makes sense. Why am I consuming so much fluoride and female hormones and all sorts of these chemicals, why are they in the water system? So we start to get them on board with using a distiller. So that's the initial thing that we start to get them to understand, which is actually, it doesn't matter how great or how perfect your diet is. If we don't remove the things that are, taking away our health, then we're going to always be looking for, we have to start from the ground up. Then we go into the sleep technology, being in the dopamine cycle of technology, the hits of technology, and why this is engineered to basically keep you distracted and keep you in a state of in pursuit of inputs. I call it. There's too many inputs. Then our brain is overwhelmed, stressed. Then we need a release from that, which is usually food because it's very, very convenient, right? So these are the things which people don't usually connect upgrading their health with. Your cell phone, your computer is making you eat like junk non-consciously.
And doing it before bed is one of the things I try not to do. Occasionally I will, or getting rid of my AirPods, which I need to do because they emit more radiation than you're supposed to take on.
So that's exactly it. We start off, moving towards those kind of conversations.
Just start understanding the environment. That's what I was referring to. My sleep cycles have changed dramatically for me, and having some experience with a sleep study person about a decade ago, and learning how to kind of train your brain to go into cycles of rhythm, which is what you're talking a little bit about, and how, I can still stay up until 2 a.m., but get up around 7 to 7:30 every day. And as long as I do that in a consistent pattern, even if I go to sleep at midnight or I go to sleep at 11 or I go to sleep at 2 in the morning, I'm still going to enter that REM cycle at the same time every morning and be able to wake up at 7 and 7:30 being refreshed. It's one of the ways I kind of have body hacked my environment. And otherwise, I know I'm not feeling well if I can't keep that rhythm going. Then I know my body's starting to slow down. If I'm sleeping too long, if I'm not getting into REM sleep, I know there's something physically wrong with me. A virus, a cold is something that's occurring. You really start to tap in. It's one of the reasons we moved into the country too, is because of all our water is filtered through multiple layers and shell down into the well system that we have, where the water comes out completely purified. So, 10, almost 9 years ago, we stopped drinking all the city water. We stopped drinking all the water we knew that had a lot of flushed chemicals. I don't know if anybody really understands how much chemicals and stuff are flushed down the toilets these days that end up in the drinking system. But you do, I'm sure.
It's crazy. Yeah. we can touch on all that stuff. You can see what they're spraying in the air, what they're spraying in our food, what they're putting into the water systems. You look at the medical industry, how it's the third leading cause of death on the planet, and this is an industry that's supposed to be taking care of our health, right? And it's funded, and all the studies, all the data, it's all funded by the same corporations, and so are the the media. It's very, very difficult to get accurate health information. I've been buying health books pre-1930 to try and look at what actually was going on there, so you can start to have a different worldview around what health is. But initially, like you said before, we have to touch on the very simple stuff, because all this stuff becomes overwhelming for the majority of people who are about to start, right? We need to get them some quick wins, take care of the environment, give them the confidence that they can gain evidence that if they take care of the simple things very quickly and very drastically, they will gain a lot of momentum and be very receptive for the next thing. And a lot of the wealthy guys who I work with have not got a clue about nutrition. They don't actually, it doesn't occur to them that they're making 3,000 plus decisions a year on what the hell to eat.
Right.
And why they should delegate that away. And that's usually it's taking them 10 hours of time of cooking, preparing, getting these meals in. That's 10 hours per week, 3,000 plus decisions a year. And then they can start to see why it's very cost effective to delegate that out, have a chef come and prep that food, have it delivered to them, or actually set a culture at home if that's going to become part of a family routine where you do it together a couple of times a week and you make the conscious decision what we're going to have. And guess what? You're way more likely to make drastic improvements rather than live a reactive lifestyle of
become less detoxified. See, at our house every day, and we're maybe a little of the anomaly here, but we cook and eat everything here every day. So every meal is prepped, everything is good. My wife obviously has understood a lot of this in the medical transitioning of getting out and detoxifying and learning how to treat her body in such a way that it keeps things clean and she's healthy and strong and feels good and sleeps well and can literally functions outside of any medical system because of that. So we cook and eat in here every day, and we drink our own water, and we've gone to the other side of the fence. So it's not even a couple times a week for us; it's every day. I know
quick one on that one. Would you have been able to do that 10 years ago? Do you think? Because in the old way that you used to live, how does that look different to today?
Well, you look when we started this thing, like 15 years ago. When we first recognized what was happening, and when my wife had her first transischemic attack. Few months after she was pregnant, and her body took a major hit with the hormones, the changes, and the pregnancy that occurred. And the first TIA, it's referred to, which is a mini stroke, occurred, which put her at a very significant deficit. She had to get glasses. She legally couldn't drive for a little bit. She had cognitive issues with recall and memory and functions. And for a bit, we weren't sure it wasn't ever going to come back. And so that process started us on a very deep path. And it was all an antagonist situation with the medical industry, to be quite frank. We felt like we were under constant scrutiny. We felt like drugs were the solution. We were told they were. We were given all these ideas that had nothing to do with cleaning up the diet or the system or anything. Gluten-free was just dumb and conspiracy, and you're a moron if you think there's gluten and it's hurting your body. I mean, all of those things that are starting to become second nature now, 15 years later, that are becoming standard practice for health and wellness in a lot of ways, and are having proven, reliable, documented results from cleaning up your diet, not just with gluten, but even dairy and other things that affected and all the stuff we've cleaned out. It's nice to not be on the fringe anymore. It literally is nice to not be felt like we're such the weird people anymore, because we treaded this water for a long time.
It's very simple when we started looking at it. It's very, very simple. We can dive into so much complexity and get overwhelmed and then reject it. So it's really, I love these conversations because it's actually surprising how simple people, once they actually see it written down, they go, man, it's so simple. It can't be true.
No, it can't be true, because why would somebody lie to me and tell me something different? This is where the aspect of cognitive dissonance and the authoritarian nature of our society kicks in, and you got to break out of that cycle. And that's one of the things you and I work on with people in my mentorship and coaching and business, and you work with the health and the high producers, breaking that mindset that says that this isn't that complex. This is more simple than you think it is. And I didn't even recognize how simple it could be until one incident occurred that was very dramatic for us. And that was when my oldest daughter, who we fought a lot of medical system issues with, and finally got her corrected and on the right path of cleaning her diet up and watching a very irrational, stubborn, difficult to manage, crazy child who would run away in a moment's notice and just had all these things that seemed very not just cognitive an issue, but just flat out disobedience and defiance. Like, why is this kid so crazy? Once we cleaned up her diet, once we detoxed her from sugar and we took away all the chemicals and the foods and the processed everything, the kid mellowed out. She is highly functioning. They would have documented her as more of like ADHD or autism spectrum.
Yeah.
She is not on that at all. She is brilliant. And she is very well in control of her facilities now at 13 going on 14. And she knows the things she can't eat and how she's going to feel. Because for her, some of these chemicals, foods, and sugars are like taking a hit of cocaine or crack meth for her. They literally have
100%.
a very similar reaction to her inability to function and to lose control. And at 5, we had cleaned up her diet and things were going very well. Mom accidentally made the mistake of saying yes to one of those little dum-dum red sugar pop things. It doesn't seem like it's such a big deal. It seems pretty simple, right? And for 2 days, we couldn't get that kid off the wall. For 2 days, we fought her. She went into like, I analogize it like the baby from The Incredibles, when he turns into this like crazy ball of fire and goes nuts. That was her for like 2 days. And it struck my wife and I, like, it was just overwhelming, like what had just happened. It felt literally like we had given the kid a crack hit of meth and she just went out of her rocker. And once she detoxified, once we cleaned her up, 3, 4, 5 days later, completely back to normal, completely listening, sleeping just fine, acting normal, playing around, doing things and being receptive. Whereas 2 days before, it was like she was on a major meth bender. And you don't recognize how simple it is to just remove those things from yourself and from your kids' lives, because they make dramatic changes. And you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to take the effort to do that, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. People have to be ready to change how they live. And it's quite confronting initially because people get a lot of comfort and a lot of instant gratification from their food, their environment, what they drink, alcohol, the social environments around where these things are consumed.
It's engineered to do that. It's engineered.
It's created. That's the environment created to create disease and to basically get us addicted to this stuff. So, it's quite confronting.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. A lot of the friendship circles that are around, that unhealthy way of living, are not going to do it. So you have to confront even things like who you spend less time with, people who smoke and drink. It's not saying that you're going to cut them off as friends, but in certain environments, you're going to have to accept that they're going to be, continuing those habits and they don't want to change those habits. And you're going to have to be aware that there are going to be areas of influence, negative areas of influence over the long term, which you can work around if you got the awareness of that. That's a thing, right? Because a lot of us, we go into people's houses, we go into social environments, and you're non-consciously consuming the junk, the alcohol that they are. And obviously,
it's a fear
the
of rejection,
intention,
right? It's that fear that they're going to reject you. You won't be friends.
Rejection, whatever it is.
Condemnation and judgment are going to occur, so you simply just go along. That's the authoritarian attitude. There were studies down in the 50s that proved that the herd, even if they knew the answer was correct, they wanted to go with the flow because they were afraid of the rejection. So over 80% of the group would follow the authority, even if they knew the answer was wrong.
We've seen that in the last 2 years with masks and V's and everything. So.
Oh boy, we're gonna have to come back and unpack that in like episode 2 and 3. So when you come back and unpack those, because we're gonna cut it here, but there's so much more than we can unpack from everything we just talked about. So before we end it, just tell me a little bit more about where you're going, what are you doing, the high producers, how can people get in contact with you if they're interested in learning more about this?
Yeah, so if they want, we start off giving some free content away called the Energy Fix. That's the initial high value area that many business owners want more of, more energy, more focus, more on-demand energy as we call it. So you can go to the highproducers.com and over there they can grab the download called the Energy Fix. Just put their email address in. It's a 11-page document. It's very, very simple. It lays out exactly what the first 5 areas are that you need to look at and how to implement those first 5 things to basically upgrade your energy very, very quickly. And they can do those things this week. There's a web class that's attached to that, which actually dabs into some of the deeper stuff around, what the roadblocks actually are, the 3 big roadblocks to upgrading our health for a busy male business owner of today, right? A modern man of today. And then from there, we've got other things that if people want some help and support, the academy is for those kind of guys who are ready to hit go now. So that's where people can go to get some insight and wisdom.
All right. Darren, thank you so much for joining me, folks. There's a simple plan to get results. Darren can help you understand how to get after that. And I hope you guys, especially my high voltage business builders who are of the male demographic, who want to look at changing, adapting, understanding, and how to apply this. There's so much into this that is so powerful about the way you do business and the way you think about business and overcome issues in business, from your health, your happiness, your joy, and of course, staying out of
confidence
depression and other things that drag men down.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you, if you need a lifting word, if you need some help and encouragement, reach out to Darren, and he can most definitely help you on that path. Darren, thanks for joining me today, brother.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
If you like this episode, please share it with people you think will enjoy it as well. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for a brand new episode of High Voltage Business Builders.